Oh, hello there. You caught me reading. There's nothing I love more than cracking into my V8 and sitting down with a good book, huh? That's right. Relaxing.
The world of Snarf.
Alright guys, but on a more serious note, I felt like starting to do some book reviews now that I've been reading more. It's something I sort of started this new year. I got a book for Christmas, read through it, picked up some more books at Barnes & Noble, started to read through them, and I figured, might give some insight as to what these books are about, what all the content is like. One that I finished first is called Bad with Money by Gaby Dunn. So I made myself a little note card on the things I want to touch on. That way I can provide some value to you guys. So this book, it was a very easy read. There was no fluffy investing or stock market language. And actually in general, it wasn't too heavily about investing or the stock market. It was more about how to recognize your finances, maybe what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and how you can sort of make some changes if you need to. This book took me about a week to read because I'm pretty busy. My Fridays through Sundays are packed, so I don't read on those days, so it really only gives me Monday through Thursday to read. You could easily do it in like a day or two, honestly. Pretty big text, no big words, nothing you really have to look up. So no prior knowledge is needed for this book. The book itself is broken down into chapters with different themes to each, like credit cards, saving for retirement, where to cut on expenses, health insurance, different topics like that maybe we see in our daily lives or something that we try and ignore in our daily lives that we probably shouldn't ignore, something that we might need to focus on or pay attention to a little bit closer. So Gaby does a great job. She gives anecdotes in all those different chapters of either herself or some of her friends that have dealt with these issues and what they've kind of looked for or changed with their habits to help make them more financially successful. Something cool I did notice, there were actually some parallels with her life and my life. She sort of described how she grew up in her financial situation, and it was a lot different than my financial situation growing up. But at the same time, some of the stuff she described is actually pretty closely related to some of the things that maybe Alexis had described to me in her financial situation growing up. So I saw parallels and some similarities both with mine and Alexis's financial life growing up. So that was kind of cool. I got to see both sides. How did mine compare to hers and vice versa. So some interesting things in there to touch on. She uses this term called a money script, as she calls it, which is basically like, how should I describe this? How you are taught finances or what your ideas and opinions and values are on money growing up and how you handle them. So if you have a very irresponsible family growing up, your money script may be a little bit different than that of a family that's very frugal, penny pinchers. So everyone grows up with a different money script is her thought process, and to that I agree. Everyone does have a different money script, so that's kind of an interesting concept. It could be good, bad. It's neither here nor there. It's just sort of what you grew up with and what your mindset is on how far, as far as how you deal and think about money. Something cool that she does mention, she talks about her success on YouTube, on other social media platforms, on blogs, which I think is pretty cool. She's 29 years old. She's a blogger, freelancer. So she's a millennial, as we'll coin it. Which means it's pretty relatable to us. She uses a lot of language that is relatable, but you can see how she's using social medias to basically gain success and sort of reach out and talk about this sort of stuff. Being in our 20s, we're a generation that maybe didn't have the right financial education that we wanted, or we walked into some bad financial situations and we don't really know how to cope with it or handle it. There's a lot of stuff we weren't taught in schools. Being that she's on social media and using all these new platforms, it's pretty cool. It's pretty relatable. And since I'm trying to become a YouTuber myself, I thought that was pretty awesome. Using Twitter, blogs, Instagram, different stuff like that to promote our stuff. So Gaby makes it pretty clear what her political stance is and how she feels about the system. So very liberal leaning political views, and that is reflected in a lot of this writing. That's neither here nor there to me. It just sort of gives you perspective on what angle she's coming from, and sort of how she is feeling about all these money scripts, these different financial topics, and how they work for or against her. She's also in the LGBTQ community, has a lot of friends in the LGBTQ community, and so she touches on that as well, how they get advantages or disadvantages. You can hear my dog scampering across the floor there. So anyway, what sort of advantages or disadvantages these people see with different financial situations. What sort of benefits they can get or what they're denied of just because of the lifestyle that they have and how they choose to live their life. So it's very eye-opening, a lot of different angles I hadn't seen, a lot of different things and anecdotes that I would have never realized. So it's very interesting to me. So what I did find most interesting was the anecdotes themselves, the stories she told. One of them, I believe, was about how, if you're in poverty or you're poor or homeless, or receiving benefits, if you start saving money and putting money away, once your savings account reaches like a certain amount of money, all of a sudden you're considered like well off, or you don't need the benefits anymore, and so they'll cut it off. So really, like, you're trying to better yourself, you're trying to save while you're in that financial state, and then the government will just sort of cut off any sort of benefits that they provide for you. So that was interesting. I never really thought about it or how the government would handle that. And it's kind of frustrating to think about. So these people are trying to get out of that financial situation, and then they get kind of slapped down once they do finally save some money. I want to say it was like $2,000 in a savings account or a checking account. If you save up that much, all of a sudden all your benefits then or your aid programs are cut off. So that was kind of wild. Another topic she touched on and kind of hits home with Alexis and I were the cost of weddings and how you can try and save money there. So a lot of people love extravagant weddings. I think they said the average wedding cost... Man, my dog is just scampering around today. Why can't you sit still, boy? But they said the average wedding cost about $33,000. That's a very large chunk of money to be spending right into a new marriage. Buddy, why are you walking around so much? That didn't help. Alright, so now they're... Hey, can you guys be good? Can you be good boys and girls? Delilah, you know Remy's too old to be playing. Isn't having kids fun? Yes, an average wedding, they said, was about $33,000. So right off the bat into a new marriage, you're sort of down or maybe even in debt, $33,000. That's huge. That is a large sum of money, That's a big chunk of someone's salary. Alexis and I, we sort of eloped. We went and had a courthouse wedding. Cost us maybe $50 to $100. And then we sort of went out and had a nice dinner. So our cost for a wedding and getting married was very low compared to the average. And that sort of gave us a foot ahead in the game as to starting our life together. So that's one thing, to think about. It's very relatable. Another one is the cost of having a kid, multiple kids, animals like these guys right now. Just a lot of different things to take into account of where you can save or spend money that maybe you didn't think about, you didn't really necessarily consider. So she does a great job of that. This book was really insightful, like I said. At the end of each chapter, she summarizes the main topics within the chapter. That way it can all sort of like come full circle and you just aren't left hanging there. So it sort of just comes back, lets you just really get a good grasp on what she was trying to say. This was much more readable than any of the other financial books I've been reading, just because she has personality. She makes things very relatable. When she used the word shook, or maybe It Be Like That. You know, that relates to the millennials a lot. You see that sort of stuff like that on Twitter a lot. So made it a much easier read. Whereas my other books use big, fluffy language, stock analysis, bond analysis, fund analysis, market analysis, all that sort of stuff, and using that big language can get a little dry. This book did not get dry, and I read through it really quickly because of that. So, would I recommend this book? Totally. Even if you're not in the investing world like I am, this is just a good book. It was entertaining, opened your eyes to maybe how you can be more frugal, save some money, cut some corners. So I don't think it's just for investors. Actually, I would argue that it's not for investors at all, because they've probably already been open to these different ideas and concepts. So maybe new people that are trying to get a handle on their finances, this book is definitely directed towards them. The next book on my list, though, that I will be reading and reviewing, just so you guys can sort of stay in the loop, is The Coffee House Investor. This one's been around for a few years now. There's been a few updates to it. It's a pretty small book. I've already about 20 pages in. Seems to be less personal, less anecdotes than Bad with Money, but still an interesting read. I'll review this and get back with you guys on that, so be looking forward to that. As always, guys, appreciate you watching. Go ahead and comment, like, subscribe, hit the bell if you feel so inclined. I know this was a new type of video. Maybe it's not everyone's flavor, but I figured I would get it out there for those of you that are looking to start reading different types of books to help your financial situation. So, until the next one, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you later.